Well, good evening, everyone. This is the Paranormal Truth Seeker. Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about EVP. I've talked about it before, and I think I've told some of you that I have a long history with EVP, but it's not just EVP that I went after. Now, EVP stands for Electronic Voice Phenomenon. And the thing about EVP is that most people are going to tell you that they're the voices of the dead. Now, these voices have claimed to be a lot of things, things from ghosts to aliens to demons to other entities to other dimensional beings. So there's so many things that they claim to be. And maybe all of it's right, and maybe none of it's right. We don't know. Now the whole thing is that we only have the knowledge that somebody died, and now we have a facsimile of their voice. And as I recall, it's between 97 and 98% certainty that it is that dead person's voice. If, and that's a big if we have a recording of that dead person before they died. And if we can compare the vocal waves, we can see that it's a high percentage that it's them. So, is it something that's so good at imitating voices that you have to ask yourself, is it them? Or is it something that claims to be them? So it's kind of hard to understand. In particular, a lot of times um, when you make contact with these so-called people that are passed on, they have things to say. They can give you secret information, so to speak, or only things they would know. And so I have had my experience with EVP for about 40 years. And so that's a long time. And as I've told some of you before, I worked with Dennis Hauk, who's an author, and he made a show about EVP, and it was called White Noise. And so Dennis was my mentor, and taught me a lot of things. Gave me ideas. He never would give me solid answers. He told me where to look and where I could find the info I was seeking, and normally just not one source. So I really appreciated that. And so he didn't want me to come up with a biased attitude, so to speak. But what I'll tell you is my own experience with EVP, and that was that before I was born, I had an uncle who accidentally was shot with a 22 between the eyes, and I think he lingered for about 3 days and passed. And so this was before, 5, 6, I don't know, 7, maybe 8 or more years um, before he died. We didn't know him, didn't have anything to do with him. I don't know that my grandmother spoke much of him, but I found it interesting when I was doing EVP that him, my grandfather, and others come through, and some of their voices I knew. And anyways, there was some speculation, whereas to somebody perhaps grabbing the gun and accidentally pulling the trigger, and the round happened. And my mom had told me, and this is where it gets really interesting. And most people, if they're seeking information, if they believe that information comes from a particular voice that they know, and it comes up with the right information, it has to be that person. But we don't know um, if it is that person. We're high percentage of the time, 90 some percent of the time plus, we know it sounds like that person. And so that voice came through, and I didn't know the voice, but I knew the voice of my grandparents and dead relatives, uncles that were there that came through my recordings. And this is when I had a studio, and he told me who was closest to him in proximity sitting when that gun went off. And to him, it was an accident. And my mother, when she was alive, she's now dead, she would never give the name of who it was, but I got that name. And so when I confronted my mom with it, she became a little upset. And my dad was in the room, I guess, when the gun went off and killed my uncle, and he saw who was there too. And anyway, so I gave my mom the name, and according to my mom, it wasn't one of the nephews, her nephews, that she believed could have had access to that gun. But my dad saw it, and my dad was a very matter of fact kind of Navy guy. And anyways, he saw it, he knew what happened, and maybe saw more than my mom did. I don't know. But I was amazed by the fact that my dad saw it, and my mom had some question about who it was, but according to EVP, the EVP that I got, it was all an accident. And so there's a lot of information that can come from those that are passed over. But fast forwarding, a couple of years ago, my father died, and when my dad died, I heard a couple of voices. I was staying in the house by myself to protect the property, and one day I went outside and heard a voice calling me about 40 yards away, I'd say, and I know it was my dad's voice, and so I immediately stopped and began to look. I mean, it was that clear, and somehow, just in a moment of looking for something in my vehicle, I heard the voice, and I immediately, come out of the vehicle and was looking, and then I had to remember that my dad was gone. And about that way, a friend came down the driveway, and I told him about what happened, and he was kind of curious too. But with that said, I was listening to a story, whether it's true or not. I don't know, to be honest with it, but I believe it to be true and can happen. That these paranormal happenings, whether it's EVPs and orbs and these other things, are combined together. That people are reporting sometimes that they hear their dead ones' voices too. And so we'd had some activity there on the property with my son, and by myself I had some activity too. And so, was it a ghost, or the ghost of my dad, or was it something else that was mischievous and maybe malevolent that used my dad's voice? And in some cases, these people go out and they have these experiences in our national parks, and they hear these voices calling them, and sometimes they don't know the voice. It's a female voice or whatever, but sometimes they have heard the voice of somebody that's living with them, which would make more sense. Or is it somebody that's passed over? In fact, one story I heard about, this individual had a number of voices and figures that appeared to him of people that were passed over. And so, needless to say, the guy got the heck out of there and didn't want to say much to anybody, because, most people would think that you were a little weird. But how many times have we heard stories like this? And do we believe that it was that person that's calling this person or speaks to this person. But again, how do we know? It's that 97% time or more that it's the same voice. But can we prove it? Or is it somebody that's replicating the voice that's good enough that not only are they fooling the average person, are they fooling everybody? Perhaps they're the Nephilim, or some other entity that's beckoning this person and letting them to believe that life after death as we know it isn't as we know it. Maybe there is a heaven and a hell. I've heard plenty of stories and been through my own experiences. Some of them you can look back at some of my videos and see, like with the angel. And anyways, there was a pastor involved that died and went to heaven and saw hell. And so I know that I saw an angel, and so did my twin brother. So there's a lot of things that we have to question. And I think that perhaps some of these things that we see that we don't know, they just make us question things if we're having an open mind. If we don't have that open mind, we're already closed up and say, no, that was my, grandma that appeared to me. But how do we know? We can't prove it. We have no, we don't have a chain of custody of evidence that support it. All we know is this person died, and now we have a facsimile appearing to us, and they can come to us with all kinds of facts. So do we know? There's, people that are clairvoyants like Marabelli who could manifest people, and these were people that were well known, and he was in Brazil. Look it up yourself. And so you have to just ask yourself, when we're dealing with the paranormal, are we truly questioning things? And I don't think we are. We have a very obscure view into things, and so we have very little to deal with. And so when we know those things to be true, like that voice, that was your grandfather's voice or grandmother or aunts or uncles or whoever's voice, you believe it's that person. But how do you really know? And that's a question I want to leave you with tonight. So if you have any questions, or maybe you've had an experience, put it in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Not going to beg you to. I'd like to have people as subscribers so that this time that I spend with you guys is well worth it. So that's all I've got to do and say. And I just want you to think about it next time you have some sort of an experience, whether it's a cryptid, a ghost, or alien. Question what you're seeing. Just because you think that it's an alien or something else, it may not be. And that's why, again, I'm just going to say, I always say, question everything. So, again, thank you for your time. And I'll let you people go. And again, God bless. And this is a Paranormal Truth Seeker. Take care.